it's very big pleasure for me today to be able to moderate today's session. So I am joined by Ali, Mutu, and Ahok, such as Davis and Niranpal and Mr. Iziddin today, right? So I'll start with a very quick introduction of our esteemed panelists. So first up, I am joined by Mr. Davis Chong. So he is the Executive Director and Group CEO of Solar Holdings Berhad. So I think without the need to, everyone knows Davis, but just for those people that are maybe from outside Malaysia. So Mr. Davis is the Executive Director, come the Group CEO, and one of the founding members of Solarvest Holdings Berhad. So he led the legacy that oversaw the company's strategic development from an SME to a publicly listed company in Bursa Malaysia's main market. He has successfully implemented strategic commercial plans from solar market in Malaysia, including grid-tied and off-grid systems, as well as self-consumption models with exposure across multiple segments such as rooftops, commercial, industrial, and utility-scale solar. Believing in the vision of creating a world generated by renewable energy, the company has grown into an industry leader in the EPCC space for solar photovoltaic during his tenure, and more than 400 megawatt peak of solar capacity has been installed across Malaysia since its formation. So under his co-stewardship, so Solarvest is currently venturing into other clean energy verticals such as energy efficiency, battery energy storage, and they also look at transforming themselves to be a clean energy specialist. And they are looking to expand further in this region. I think there are a couple of markets that you're looking into beyond Malaysia, right? So he's also currently the president of Malaysia PV Association, MPIA. So please give a round of applause to Mr. Davis. And next, I have joined by Mr. Niranpal Singh. So he's the Managing Director, Malaysia, BayWa APAC. So Niranpal Singh represents BayWa Malaysia. So he leads the development of the WRE component business units. So namely energy solutions, solar project development, and solar equipment trade for the country. So Niranpal currently maintains his current portfolio as the head of BayWre Energy Solutions business unit within APAC, and he joined BayWre back in 2019 as the GM for Energy Solutions Malaysia before leading the team in APAC. So prior to in his current position, he has spent 3 years developing mini-grids, rural solar hybrid solutions, and commercial rooftop solar as an EPC. So again, round of applause to Mr. Niranpal. And last but not least, I am joined by Mr. Iziddin, Abdullah. He is a senior project advisor. So it's a bit mouthful. I can't really pronounce it in German, but in short, GIZ, GmbH. He has almost 2 decades of technical and leadership roles in following industries: semiconductor, property, data center, university, telecom, ports, and previously he led a sustainability energy programs at 22 government hospitals. So his focus is mainly on energy efficiency, EE and RE, renewable energy, project implementation, planning execution for overall KL cities, authorities like DBKL, and to be benchmarked with other cities around the world in terms of climate change and sustainability. So he has done more than 2 dozen projects around KL to implement these clean energy projects, and he's also looking at district cooling potential. So as energy advisor, he is playing the role of a project management consultant in the clean energy sector. Noor Iziddin carries out work related to low carbon initiatives supporting UN SDG, ESG agenda based in Kuala Lumpur, Climate Action Plan 2050, and Dasar Tenaga Negara 2022-2040. So a quick introduction of myself. So that's Iziddin. So I am Taufik Azami. So I'm the senior manager from Accenture. I'm leading the net zero transitions team in Malaysia. So I have over 12 years experience in the solar industry and consulting industry. So previously I was a solar engineer myself and have a degree in solar PV engineering from University of New South Wales. So a quick intro to this topic. So today we are going to cover ways to improve efficiency through innovation and attain sustainability goals through rooftop projects in Malaysia. So the earlier panelists and presenters have talked about number of innovations actually. So in terms of the use of the N-type versus P-type cells and modules. So and there's also a number of innovations around the equipments that you have heard earlier. So we're going to hear more from our esteemed panelists today on the practicality and how actually you do that from a real world standpoint. So we know about the problem of climate change. I wouldn't touch more on that, but just to touch a bit of context, right, in terms of from a change, we know all these targets, UN SDGs, Net Zero 2050. So we all know about that, right? But one interesting fact from a societal level, so everyone talks today about ESGs, and definitely solar projects will be ways that companies will look into in terms of integrating ESG, integrating UN SDG into the ways they're doing business. So one interesting fact I'd like to quote is, from a Malaysian standpoint, so now we talk about there's a general election coming, so just to touch a bit on the sentiment. So at a society and individual level, 7 out of 10 Malaysians place more priority on environmental protection more than economic growth and job opportunities. So that's one interesting fact that I'd like to share. And in terms of pursuing greater environmental protection, impact in society, so renewable energy projects such as solar PV, so that has been since the 2000s, right? And recently has been on an upwards and accelerating trajectory. So given the economies of scale, this has caused significant drop in price of solar PV panels and inverters and whatnot. So I would like to maybe cover a bit on the type of solar projects. Of course, out there are a number of different types of solar projects. So rooftops, of course, is what we're going to focus on today. But there are others that we're not going to touch, like for example, floating PV. There's some new trends where people start even piloting the use of PV panels on balconies of apartments and so on and so forth. So those are a number of trends, but today, with recent announcement of VPPA, so the focus will be on rooftops, right? So I would probably start with the first question. So first with Mr. Niranpal, right? So earlier panelists talked about the different technologies. So on average, the solar panels price I mentioned has been on a decrease. However, due to inflation and supply chains disruptions happening lately, we are seeing solar pricing increasing slightly or staying flat. So what are the different type of innovation approaches that solar players are taking in driving efficiencies for current and future solar rooftop projects? So maybe if you could take on the first one. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Taufik. I think that's a very interesting and relevant question, especially currently when we are faced with a lot of disruptions. When it comes to supply chain and pricing, I think this was never an effect that a lot of the developers or solar players thought about previously. But today, I mean, the reality is that we are competing against different economies, different regions for product, for supply, and obviously every developer and every project wants to optimize. One part of optimizing a project is obviously cost, because that's a big component. And generally, when we look at cost, it goes back to the business models. We've seen that developers are moving towards, in the context of rooftop or on-site solar, they have been moving towards PPAs or solar leasing models, and basically that is one kind of a financial hedge in a way, because the cost impact, although yes, on a project level, you might see some impact, but generally it's leverage within the business model. A lot of developers also try to cluster, build a portfolio, and within the portfolio, they try to balance out costs. But again, I think the gist of it is that end of the day, we have to also look at channels And when it comes to channels and distribution, generally manufacturers look at a particular country for stability in a program. So if Malaysia has a stable outlook where programs are being announced year after year, there would be more focus on a particular country to support that country and the different channels. Channels could include, direct management of stocks in the country itself, or basically appointing distribution. We've seen that, Malaysia is relatively small as a market, but compared to, for example, Europe, there has been a lot of reliance, or generally the EPC market or how the rooftop solar market progresses is basically through their reliance of the trade channels. And you find that there are a lot of large players just in solar trade or equipment sales. I was lucky enough to actually be at Intersolar this year, and it's just amazing to see how many large suppliers there are in places like Germany, in Europe, that basically just distribute inverter, PV panel. And you find that year after year, if you have gone to some of these sessions over the last couple of years, you also do find that there's a lot of switching in brands and of course technology, because we all know and we've heard from the solar manufacturers, the PV manufacturers, that different brands invest in different technologies at a particular time. So leapfrogging is also something that would matter. And distribution, distributors and distribution are looking into the next phase and how they kind of support the EPC market. So generally in terms of hedging, so back to the question on pricing and optimizing, I think generally it's also how we can work together with the network, and associations like MPIA obviously help, because generally I think this is where we can kind of bring up certain issues or questions, or if any of the smaller EPCs require support, this is kind of a forum where I think collective bargaining is going to be important. So this would generally then help to push and ensure that success of especially smaller projects, because they are more sensitive to price fluctuations.
So if I could maybe take a few takeaways from there, I think suppliers, working with the suppliers is very important. I think there's a lot of suppliers in this room today. Hedging and also working together with the suppliers, right, to really bargain and get the best deal for your solar projects. I think those are maybe one of the innovations that you highlighted. So I would like to move on, because I think the theme of the day, I think people talk about, in the early panel, people talk about VPPA, right? So maybe there's a lot of interest around that. So I would like to build on that. So I'll look at Davis as probably the next one that could look into that, right? So my question would be, to enable corporate and MNCs to achieve their sustainability goals. So the government has recently, introduced that VPPA, 600 megawatt quota. And from your point of view, what are from a company standpoint out there that they're looking at putting in place and taking that opportunity? So from your point of view, from Solarvest point of view, what are those innovation opportunities and efficiencies that they should consider?
Okay, for this topic, we're talking about innovations, right? So when talking about the rooftop, so initially I won't actually relate VPPA much, because we're talking about 30 megawatt of capacity offsite PPA to actually let those companies to be able, RE100, to reach their ESG goals. Of course, this is one of the way that what we advise the clients that we have, which are all the multinational companies, that you're going to maximize your distributed generations, put all the rooftops to be full, do the full on-site PPA, but surely we know it's not enough. So to look into the landscape in Malaysia, how is the factories and all this, we don't see big factories, many big factories that you're able to really become an RE100 company by putting an on-site PPA. So that's will never good enough. So we have a constraint and limitation like this. Then we're going to use a bit of innovations on the policy, on the business side, how can we close the gap to let them to be able to high 100 or net zero. So rooftop, it is a must that we need to maximize it to reduce your carbon footprint. And there are innovations on the business model and policy side that we can play. Example, P2P energy trading. VPP is possible, but VPP, if you use your rooftop, maybe you can put 5-10 megawatt. It's not optimizing the size. That this round we have 30 megawatt as maximum. Everybody want to do 30 megawatt. So this is economical scale. So when we maximize the rooftop installations, and we also can combine with certain technology, different mounting method, inverter, string design, innovations on the engineering side to maximize the installations. Then we talk about how can we have other policies. For me, innovations on policy and business that to cater the rest of the capacity that you need to complete to be net zero 100% RE. So there are a lot of ways to play, and I would say more to what I will be supporting is a lot of innovations on the business model, from contracts to financing model. Then I think policy as well, it play a lot of importance. EV is coming up. EV is coming up to change the energy consumptions. And if you have policy to fix some charging rate, if you have night charging rate, day charging rate, you have V2G, V2L policy, you can actually change the consumptions, that how RE can affect the energy landscape. But end of the day, holistically, we look into Malaysia market. Malaysia energy market is small. We're going to have a policy and business model to cater a small energy market compared to our neighboring country. So this is a kind of a big topic to discuss.
I think you mentioned a few things, right? P2P energy trading, business model, so EVs. So I think not sure if those in the room, those that are using iPhone, right? So when you upgrade to the latest iPhone 16.6, the iOS 16, so you have a feature in the battery that there is an option that enables clean energy charging option. So that feature is available in the US only, but I think those features are coming, of course, starting from the iOS, but soon it will permeate across EVs and all various different equipments. So very good sharing. And I think you cover on the company. So I would like to move on to IR Noor Iziddin. How about from the governments, our local municipalities like the BKL? I think you have some interesting work that you do around the area, and maybe you could talk a bit on that front.
Okay, thank you, Taufik. Morning, everyone. Okay, basically, just a quick one. I have a few slides. So this slide is talking about the roadmap of Kuala Lumpur towards the net zero emission 2050. So I'm currently representing the GIZ, the one that bringing the fund for all the cities, big cities, and the government around the world to kickstart the energy projects from the point of EE and RE. For your info, I'm in charge of the EE, RE, and district cooling upcoming for the Kuala Lumpur city. So what I can say that for the past 1 year, the Kuala Lumpur authority already come up with the requirement of development order, DO. At least 30% of the rooftop or whatsoever related to electricity must come from the renewable energy. So I think it's already been announced towards the end of MCO 3.0, end of last year, so it's already 1 year already. So I think can we go to the next slide? A quick one. We are the funding from the German, UK, and also French, that where we are advising the Kuala Lumpur and to be benchmarked with more than a dozen cities under the phase 3. So last time there's a US investment, but now we have like three government. So we are planning for big things. So in terms of the energy that we will try to replicate. Once we settle with the Kuala Lumpur City Authority, we will replicate it towards the rest of the local authorities within 50 to 100 kilometers radius from the Kuala Lumpur city centre. So this is one of the way that we want to showcase that Kuala Lumpur city is towards the climate change, and hopefully we can achieve the net zero. So I think even one of the things is, I think people are talking about rooftop. So we have a limitation of rooftop. So maybe after this event, I think you all can, using a Google Earth, you can count how many lakes that available in Kuala Lumpur cities. So I think the Energy Commission already come out with the VPPA guideline yesterday. So we're not sure whether we can do it at the floating or even rooftop. So some of the things that what we discussed with some of the authorities is to use at least or less than 50% of the total lake footprint. So it will be an opportunity if we can maybe get 10 to 20 megawatt. Maybe our friend from TMB also can help us together with the Energy Commission and the Sustainable Energy Development Authority, because this is one of the way that to showcase that, so that because we are in the process of coming out with the low carbon checklist, and also not forget in terms of the net zero. So bear in mind, solar will not solve the whole game of net zero emission. You need the EE, you need the energy conservation. Like myself, my electricity bill at home is below 100 ringgit. Do you think I put the solar at home? I will not put my solar at home because my energy consumption is less than 100 ringgit. Because I have 1.5, 2 horsepower, not 5-star but 3-star aircon. I started with the energy conservation followed by energy efficiency. It's just that solar now is become so sexy, and it sounds, we call it more corporatized when it comes to talk with all the investors and so on. But no harm. I think today event is more towards energy storage also, so we need to combine solar together with the energy storage. I think next slide, the last one, I think I'm not sure whether most of you are aware that we have the Kuala Lumpur Climate Action Plan 2050. I think we are talking about 70% decrease and 93% decrease of CO2 under scope 2, under the GHG calculation. So I think the rest of the slide here is just to show that how we approach, how we engage, and how we deal with all the government agency, because it's part of the G2G initiative. Okay, thank you. Back to the Taufik.
All right. So I think you mentioned some key takeaways is really the regulatory push. In a way, in a small way, like DBKL, they set to be low carbon cities, right? They mandate about 30% of the new developments have to have, the new developments have to have, the energy have to be powered, at least 30% have to come from renewables, solar, right?
30% of the rooftop area.
Rooftop, yeah. So
it's part of the development order, and it's going to be later on to be enforced when it comes to CCC.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's really an example of how the local municipalities has played a role. And I think from Accenture, we do work with the likes of in UK. So their local municipalities is required to produce a net zero plan. So this is some outside in trend that we are seeing, and that has happened in Malaysia, and I think many more local municipalities will follow suit. I think it's not going to be it's the trend that we are seeing, right? So we cover a number of things. So now I would like to move on back to Mr. Niranpal. Right? So there's so much. So in terms of innovation, in terms of the customers, right? The covering from a customer side. So from a normal layman customers, they want to go for this number of different solutions, different innovations. So what do you say out there to the customers in terms of knowing what type of innovation and efficiency measures that they should look in order to consider for their adoption of solar rooftop projects? So maybe you could cover a bit about that.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So when it comes to basically system optimization, generally we tell customers that technology has advanced to a certain stage where we know that panel manufacturers or even inverter manufacturers carry certain warranty and assurance. So the concept of assurance is generally important because when we look at LCOE and system ownership, it's not a system that lasts 5 years. It's something that should remain active and producing energy for at least 25 or 30 years. where they would generally get a lot more benefits. So there is an education behind it. So generally, once we've kind of passed through a stage where the customer is interested, is motivated, he understands what is the requirements, we try to basically put together a system that, kind of is technologically sufficient and has a balanced price. When it comes to pricing as well, obviously operation and maintenance is a big impact, because again, I mean, you could build a system and you could do it well, but generally, I think we've seen in Malaysia, it happens a lot that, we build nice buildings and condominiums and complexes, but after 5 years, when you go into an old mall, you really see that, there's a lot of wear and tear. So this is also a concern of customers, because they generally feel that, if they are paying or investing for a system themselves, they might be faced with such situations. So, options that they generally have is to basically go out to reputable suppliers or installers. And I would say generally Malaysia has a good, kind of a good cluster of good, competent employers that can basically, or EPCs that can basically carry out the jobs. That SEDA has the competency program, basically certifying engineers, ensuring that at least the systems that they design and put together have a certain integrity when it comes to reliability. So I think these concepts really matter, and I think we are lucky to be in this environment where the programs have developed in such a way that EPCs and developers have stayed on, and generally you see that they're kind of staying in the market longer, which means that they would generally have a longer reputation in the market as well. So I think credibility is important. So generally we don't encounter such problems, but I just want to maybe kind of take an opposing view of Vietnam, where they had a very high demand or very high rollout of on-site FIT a couple of years ago, and nothing happens now. So basically, it's kind of plateaued down, and the reason for that is obviously the government has stopped with the FIT program. There's no continuity. But when we speak to some of the corporate customers, there's also a fear of failure, and these customers generally kind of have examples of companies that have basically signed on 2 years back, but never got system connected, never have had good quality from coming out from the systems. So obviously when there is a big rush to run a particular program in a very limited span of time where the country has not built up capability, there would lead to generally a situation where customers would generally tend to get a bit anxious, and obviously then it slows down the market as well. But I think Malaysia generally we are progressing, and as I said, year after year there's continuity of a program, and there's new technology being adopted as well that keeps us moving.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned a couple of aspects there, right? I think around the warranties, around the insurance, the technology, of course, is important. Operation and maintenance, reputable developers, right? Definitely, because it's like owning a car. You don't want to buy a car with a lease of 20 years, but then halfway, when you have problems, the developer is no longer, the shop is already closed, right? So you have a problem with that. I think that's, and definitely from a sustainability goal standpoint, they have a goal when they invest in this project. They have a goal to be reached in terms of the ESG, UN SDG, etc., and you don't want that to be hampered by poor user experience from owning these systems, right? Because the system is going to last longer than 20, 30 years, some even last up 30 years plus, right? So we cover on that side. So I would like to move on to Davis on on the pricing aspect, right? So it's of course on the pricing and the financing mechanism. Maybe there's some innovation that you recently have rolled out, and probably you want to share with the crowd today.
Yeah, I think speaking on that, what we experienced in Malaysia market in the past, that everybody compares solar energy investment. They're not looking at sustainability yet in the past 10 years when we started. They don't care about whether this is reducing carbon emissions and all this. They just talk about, okay, if I put this money into this asset, what is the ROI period? So we always compare in a perspective that, okay, what is the benefit of, what is the ROI of this asset? In the past, we have tax incentive and all GITA, GIT and all this. It makes the asset to give you ROI within 3 to 5 years. Though a lot of investors in Malaysia, they're still comparing like, if I put it into buying this machine in my company, give me ROI 3 years. Can you make it 3 years so I can make the investment decisions? Good that we have public awareness and all this, by the ecosystem in Malaysia, that we are building more and more ESG thinking corporate and business now. So now they're no longer looking into, this is less attractive than my other investment, which is non-ESG at all. So now they are looking into it, and we're looking into it already. Okay, what's the option I have? Can I only pay capex? I do bank financing 80-20. Can I don't pay anything? Can I just pay by PPA model? Can I just pay by leasing model? And now we even come out with a JV model. So example like our company, we come out with a PowerWest platform that we can actually giving the financing option for you, whether you want to have a power lease with a leasing model, PowerWest Lite or PowerWest Hybrid or something like that to give an option. For me, being a contractor or developer of solar industry is like, we want to putting up all the options. So which one do you like? And we hope that the management or the business entity, that you know what is the exact objective that you want to achieve. Is that environmental attributes? Is that cost saving? Is that branding for the company or something else? So then we can structure and strategize, help you to strategize the roadmap accordingly. So we put up more and more options. So with PowerWest platform, we also know conventional financing is like, go through the banks is a bit lengthy and it's a lot of this. So we manage all the process. We put it into eKYC, put it into fintech platform to do all the process so it be more efficient and to automate some of the process. Then we'll have a credit scoring and all this so for the client to save up some time, and also will enable this to a smaller scale financing as well, which sometimes the banks are not so keen on financing smaller project as well. So we put up this kind of new combine the technology and then to serve to renewable energy contract now.
So really about making it as easy as possible, I think that's one of the
complicated things to be simple.
Yeah, so that's definitely, I think, one of the barriers that you have trying to address, and definitely I think we need more of this type of solutions because solar industry is maturing. So I probably want to move on to my last question to Iziddin. So I think I want to talk about the benefits. I think earlier you shared about the various projects that you do. So can you elaborate more from energy efficiency? You mentioned energy efficiency. You mentioned about solar, right? So how do you typically bundle that together to really make it attractive for municipalities, companies to consider solar or to consider rooftop projects from your point of view?
Okay, so basically I believe some of the agencies require something like a help or assistance. So we, from the point of, we are giving an assistance in terms of the project management, funding and financially to assist them to kickstart from the feasibility study to due diligence to the design to the power system study if it's related to renewable energy and energy audit, detailed energy audit, or preliminary audit, or even investment grade audit if it's related to the what you call it, the EE. And not forget also the detailed energy audit or investment grade audit can be used part and parcel of to start another project which is called energy performance contract. So not to be confused with the engineering, procurement and construction, EPC or EPCC in the oil and gas or the construction industry. So I think our value is that we are benchmarking with the rest of the cities around the world, where we try to simplify the carbon emission calculation. I know people are now talking about voluntary carbon management and so on, but when it comes to when we benchmark with other cities, we are simplifying the carbon parameters. I think in others calculation, GSG whatsoever, we have a few dozen of parameters, whereas on our side, it's just more than a dozen parameters. And related to that, I think what I would like to see is that, not to say what I would like to see, what we have foresee, what I'm thinking is that I think there's always a limit on the renewable energy, especially solar. I think if you go through whatever the guideline itself mentioned about 75% MD on the medium voltage, CT ratio, low voltage at 60% of CT ratio, hopefully that one can be increased further. But again, we go back tied up to the authorities because solar is intermittent, so it will affect the grid stability. And not forget, last but not least, what I would like to add is that it's about there's another initiative called Net Zero Building. So I think if you look at the Net Zero Building, I think it's been championed by SEDA with the help of ST. If you want to put the renewable energy, you cannot exceed 50% of the reduction. That one alone on the scope 2. If you are talking about electricity, scope 1, we are talking about the related to fuels and so on. So for me, I need to prioritize which building that need to go towards net zero building. If there's emphasis on that, then we need to cap the renewable energy, the reduction using renewable energy such as solar, less than 50%. So that, because we know that you start first with the energy triangle. The bottom one will be the energy conservation, followed by the energy efficiency, where energy efficiency, you are trying to control the demand side. And always last but not least, the renewable energy at the top, which is you are trying to diversify the supply. So there's a lot of initiatives, so I believe there's people outside there that the problem is that sometimes the market need to be educated which one that you need to prioritize. Educate your staff first, educate your kids. Then only you change your freezer, aircon, whatsoever to 3-star, 5-star. And last but not least, since we are in desperate to reach the 2050 net zero, then renewable energy can be one of the things to diversify the energy supply. Back to Taufik.
Yeah. So essentially what you're saying is, of course, different companies, different bodies have different goals when it comes to adopting rooftop solar projects. So one of the logical thing to do, of course, ESG goals, sustainability goals are important, but at the end of the day, companies are about making profits, making money. How do they reduce their OPEX? And definitely, I think one of the things that you're saying is, okay, along with adopting solar, you should look at how do you reduce your consumptions, right? And that should be the first starting point. Then look at solar to be able to complement and to produce that green energy. So I think that we have about 5 more minutes. The other question that probably we could cover is more from the wish list, right? So what are the wish lists that you would like to have? Of course, there are many innovations out there that we see in the market, right? But at certain, we are limited by our tariff, right? Our electricity tariff in Malaysia is not as it is not reflecting the real situation. Hence, the economics and the ROI is not as attractive, and usually it takes longer, right? So, of course, if it's really reflecting the real situation out there, as our neighbors are paying in terms of electricity, definitely the ROI will be a lot more attractive, and people will be jumping, right? As soon as they see their neighbors or their neighboring company sisters put up solar and they see how much they are paying the bills, definitely everyone, without question, will be subscribing to solar. So maybe this is open. Any one of you want to take up? What are your wish lists now is of course election season, but what are your wish lists? If one of you could take maybe for us to close the panel session.
Yeah, maybe I can start and then I'll pass it around. So I think in terms of the policy, policy surety and continuity is one. So basically, I think we are in a period where the VPPA has been announced. It's part of the 1.2 gigawatt, but basically we know that this is just one component. We don't have clarity on what's coming next. I think it's important to have a very clear roadmap for players in the industry to get prepared. And I think, back to the question of innovation and how this is supported, I think generally innovation and technology does find a way into the market if the market has a clear path forward. So I think that's very important. And obviously, second point would be, as Iziddin pointed out, it's also very important to have agencies that come in and support these transitions, because again, as part of the roadmap, we know already that some of the customers and consumers have different motivation and different ambition to why they are adopting solar, be it rooftop or through a PPA. But generally saying that, I think it's important that we kind of segregate and separate. There will be definitely those that are motivated for the savings, and I think this is a good way still to adopt solar, and I think it helps to balance the load and the distribution of generation. Again, I think there's other innovations, and TMB, for example, is also playing a role in rolling out EV. Petronas, for example, Gantari, we know already, and we see. We've, I think, recently also seen the first announcement of a JV between two parties where they are setting out kind of a EV station, like a petrol station, so that will be coming on stream as well. So this kind of changes the landscape, right? So maybe I can stop here and give opportunity to Davis to also put in some comments.
Yeah, I think I'll speak. Like all of us are homeowners. Some of us are business owners. I think we, as a part of the industry stakeholders, we do want the end user, whether you are homeowners or you are business owners, that Malaysia have a very good ecosystem and government policies, clear government policies, and even though I agree that in certain way that is not so certain, not so certain in the upcoming longer terms, but it's still good enough compared to a lot of neighboring countries that it give us certainty that the GITA, GITE, and all the NEM rakyat and all this thing to give us the policy to install solar. So we have good ecosystem. As homeowners or as a business owners, put a little bit effort and time to understand what is suitable for you. Now, adoptions to RE is a no-brainer now. The cost and the efficiency, the technology, the ecosystem, expertise in the market already enough for you to give you a very successful project, whether you are home or you are business or you are utility scale. Malaysia has very good ecosystem right now. And if you don't do it, like Iziddin, which you know why you don't do it, because my consumption is not enough to do it. That's good. Means you're saving energy more than you try to replace your energy source. So that's good. Not everybody needs RE, even you can do a very good energy conservation and energy efficiency. So that's good. So I just think that the awareness and the drive, we can actually, as an individual or as a company, we can do it more in Malaysia right now, because we have 2050 net zero target. So everybody play a part, from an individual to a company.
What I can say, my last advice is, in any property development, buildings, commercial industry, try not to over-design the buildings. Last time we have seen during COVID-19, most of us can work from home, can work from anywhere. So I think if we can control the design, don't over design, especially on the ACMV system, on the electrical system, then you don't need to do a lot of things. Yes, there is, but with the over design, with the over capacity, in the end, you are the one that suffer, need to pay the connected load charges if you don't exceed the MD, and by trying to do whatever renewable energy. So try to start from the design stage. That's why I think there's some effort last time, and that we still need to continue on the green building initiative. Not doing the operation and maintenance, but doing the design and construction. So by doing that, you can control your budget and your capex and also opex lah. Okay, that's all.
So thank you very much for the panelists for sharing their perspective today. I think we are at the end of the session. So yeah.